My name is Chef Cole Kraft. Here we have
Chef Campos.
Okay, together today we're going to make a couple of Caribbean-inspired dishes for you guys. Chef Campos, what are you going to make today?
Basically going to make use some techniques, classic techniques. We're going to infuse it a little bit with Caribbean flavors, a little bit of Latin flavors. So we're going to do a beef tenderloin. Instead of wrapping it like traditionally with the bacon, we're going to take some ripe plantain. We're going to wrap it with ripe plantain, and then we're going to cook it sous vide. Once we cook that sous vide, we're going to do a rum and raisin sauce, and we're going to serve it with some caramelized carrot. Okay?
All right, to accompany that, I'm going to make a coconut creme brulee. So it's very simple. We're actually going to start out with the creme brulee today. So let's go ahead and start that one up, okay? What I'm going to do, first off, let me go over the ingredients that I have with you guys, okay? I have some regular cream, some coconut milk. That's what's going to give our coconut flavor, give it that Caribbean flavor. All right. I also have some brown sugar. Brown sugar is going to have a little bit more richness to the dish. It won't necessarily change the color of the custard too much, but it's going to give it a nice flavor. I also have some regular sugar over here and some egg yolks. Okay. Normally, creme brulees or custards are set with an egg, and this is one of the things we teach here at the Cordon Bleu. Different styles of custards, different things we can do with all of our ingredients. Okay. So first off, let me start off with my cream. Okay, I'm just going to add my heavy cream. I also have my coconut milk that I'm going to go ahead and add to that.
Basically, can't do this with any other flavor. It doesn't have to be coconut.
And brown sugar.
And doesn't have to be brown sugar. Now, the brown sugar is going to add a little bit more of a flavor of that kind of like sugar cane flavor. It does contain a little bit more impurities than the white sugar, so it brings out a different flavor.
What it has is a little bit of natural molasses. And that molasses is going to come through and actually kind of richen up the dish. Not that it's rich already, but it's going to have a good taste to it. All right. So while I have my my cream over here warming up, I have some egg yolks and some sugar. I'm going to end up putting this egg yolk and sugar together in a process called we call blanchir and tempering. Okay. I do not want to add my egg. Yeah, sure. I do not want to add my sugar too quickly. Okay. I do need to wait off until that cream is nice and hot. Okay. So once I know that cream's hot, Chef,
yep.
Let me borrow that whisk.
It is hot.
All right.
You can see some starting to bubble in the sides, so that's when you know it's hot. You don't want it to boil too much. So
all we do need to do is scald the milk, and scald the milk is basically when it starts to throw off that steam. Okay. Over here, now that my cream's hot, I'm going to go ahead and add little by little. This process is called tempering. Okay. Whenever you're doing any style of custard or anything like that, you want to temper your eggs, and what that's going to do is allow the egg proteins not to cook so quickly, okay? We want these egg proteins to set inside the oven when we're actually cooking this dish, okay? Add a little bit more, okay? And this is basically why most people are afraid of creme brulee, because they can have the tendency of cooking the eggs right away, and then it's gonna end up lumpy. So what you wanna do is slowly and surely add the cream, all right? So once we have that all together, all right? So that's good. Chef, you take this, please?
Sure.
All right. So what I have over here are some ramekins, some baking dishes. Okay. We're going to fill these up, and then we're actually going to cook this in a water bath. I'll explain the water bath in a second. So what I want to do is just add a bit of this cream, okay, almost to the top. Okay. You have to remember, a creme brulee is called a creme brulee because it's a burnt cream, and what we burn on top is actually some sugar. So there you'll see a little bit more sugar later on once we're going to plate up. All right, get those full. Very nice. Thank you, sir. Now, one problem we do have here, we have some bubbles on the top of our creme brulee. If we leave them on there and bake them, they're going to stay like that. So in order to get a nice crust of sugar on top, we need to get rid of those, okay? And since we're going to be using a torch later on to burn off the sugar or caramelize the sugar, I'm going to use that right now to get rid of these bubbles. Now, you don't want to do it too much, you don't want to do it too hot. All you want to do is pass it over real quick. Okay, it takes off all those bubbles, and what we'll have is a nice, smooth custard. Now, you don't want to leave that flame on there too much, or else it's going to burn your custard. All right? Now, Bain-Marie. Okay, what we need to do now is put some water in our pan. Okay, why do we put some water in the pan? One reason, so we can create a humid environment in the oven. Okay, we want this custard to slowly coagulate and cook. Okay, so by adding water, and one tip that I will say, it's best to use hot water. Okay, hot water is going to allow you less time in the oven. If we start with cold, we have to wait for that water to heat up. So start off with hot water, we'll be in a lot better shape. All right, I have the oven preheated at 325 degrees. We don't want to keep this too hot, okay? If we cook it too hot, then it may curdle and, you know, not be so smooth, okay?
So Chef, we have a question. Is there a reason you had a hot pan before you added the cream?
Not necessarily a reason behind the hot pan. It did kind of speed up things. That's the main reason why I did it today. But we can start in a cold pan without any worries. So we're gonna leave that cook. I'm gonna pass it over to Chef Campos. He's gonna start off with his plantain wrapped tenderloin.
Let's go.
Right.
Let's start it then. So I got some hot oil. We're gonna fry the plantain first, and we're gonna wrap that tenderloin with a fried plantain. Now, this comes from a traditional dish. They do where I come from. I'm from Puerto Rico, and we do a dish where we take ripe plantain and we fill it with a ground beef, and then we kind of like fry it. It's more like a fritter. It tastes really good. So we're thinking what we can do that we can apply is those techniques we learned here at Le Cordon Bleu to whatever we know, whatever we have from our roots, you know. So we're doing basically tenderloin. We're doing the same technique that we're doing, and we're gonna apply a new technique which is called sous-vide. Sous-vide is basically a new cooking technique where you vacuum pack the food. You put it on a plastic bag like this one. And what you want to do is you want to take all the air out, and then you're going to cook it in a hot water bath. Now, the reason we want to do that is because you can have a perfect control of the temperature that you're cooking your product. So if I set the water for 145 degrees Fahrenheit, my tenderloin is never going to be higher than 145 degrees, so I'm going to end up with a perfect medium beef. Okay, so let's start here. The first thing we're going to do, let me move a little bit my ingredients here. Okay, we get some carrots we're going to use to garnish the plate, some shallots.
Now, Chef, you said the sous vide was a relatively new technique.
Yeah, basically, we started using it in the 1970s. It comes a little bit like in the 1950, more or less. They started to vacuum pack food to preserve it because you take away all the oxygen. Mm-hmm. So it's better to preserve. Now, there's a lot of benefits about cooking sous vide, but there's also a few things you cannot do when you're cooking sous vide. Okay, so I think we have a question: is what way of cooking called again?
It's called sous vide.
Sous vide. Actually, sous vide, it just means under pressure. It's just under pressure. You can use the sous vide to cook, or you can also use the sous vide just simply to store items, or you can use it to compress or to marinate. Why to marinate? Because you're gonna add a lot less of your marinating solution, mm-hmm. So you're gonna have less spending.
And part of the question was to boil it. And we actually don't boil a sous vide.
Yeah, that's very, very important. If you boil, you're cooking at a higher temperature, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, so you're gonna overcook your meat. So you wanna have your meat being cooked just like 140 degrees, more or less. It depends if you like it medium or medium rare or medium well. Okay.
All right, we're having a good question coming in. Why are we using a red cutting board for the meat, Chef?
It's very easy. In the kitchen, we normally have different colors. Why? To prevent cross-contamination. If we're cooking vegetables and we're cutting vegetable, you want to cut the vegetable on a green cutting board. Okay, if you're cutting fish, normally we use a blue cutting board. Poultry, a yellow one. That way you prevent the cross-contamination of the food. Okay, so let me start here for a second. Let me explain something very fast. This is a tenderloin. This is a tenderloin. It's the same piece of meat. The difference in shape is because this one I rounded a little bit to make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more elegant. Now, how do we do that? It's very simple. I'm gonna take a little bit of cheesecloth, okay? And I'm gonna put it right there. I'm gonna kind of like press it.
Basically kind of wrapping it up.
Yeah, you're gonna wrap it and then you press both sides, you see?
Okay. We had another question coming in. How do we make sure that we keep the meat out of the temperature danger zone while we're cooking?
Basically, we put it in ice. If you have it outside, you have 4 hours in the danger zone. So it all gonna depend on how long are you're gonna be using it. Like right now, we're gonna be here for about 45 minutes, and we're gonna cook this way before that. So you want to keep it in ice or put it in the cooler.
Excellent.
Okay,
right.
So you see
Beautiful.
how we changed the shape of the tenderloin. Very, very simple, but it looks a lot more elegant. Okay, so now going to our plantain. We're gonna use ripe plantain. You have to be careful. The plantain is not too ripe, you know, and you don't want the plantain also too green. Okay, you want it. This one is actually kind of nice. Although you see it, it's black. It's black because it was in the cooler. Normally, when you put a plantain in the cooler, what's gonna happen? It's gonna turn that color. Let me get a plate. Okay, and what we're gonna do is that we're gonna cut both sides of the plantain. I'm gonna peel this plantain. Okay.
Another question's coming in. When we're using sous vide, should we season with oils or some other seasonings in the bag?
Definitely, you can put whatever you want. Now you need to be very careful. Since you don't have any evaporation of those aromas, if you put too much spices, too much garlic, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have it's gonna be overpowering all the other flavors. So you're gonna end up with a very, very strong aroma.
Very strong.
And you really want to taste the meat. So that's very important. For me, when I'm cooking meat, especially when I'm cooking tenderloin, I just use salt and pepper. If you wanna put something else, you can do it, but you gotta be careful that you don't overpower the flavor of the meat.
And especially with the sous vide, we're kind of focusing on the meat a little bit more. So we're taking a lot of pride and a lot of care on how we're cooking the meat. So we don't necessarily need too many other ingredients necessarily.
So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use a mandolin. Okay, mandolin is a utensil we use in the kitchen, in a professional kitchen, to make perfect slice. You can also do bâtonnet, which is a cut, or julienne. If you don't have one of these, very simple, you can take a peeler, a potato peeler, and you can peel slices from your plantain. So what we're gonna do is just gonna be careful here. Just gonna make some slice. Sure.
Pass
You
me over a
get
few
at
of those.
least
I'll
2 or
start.
3 slices. And chef here is gonna start
I'm just going to take a couple pieces as you're doing.
frying a few of
Alright.
those pieces.
So you get one that's not so broken up here.
Yeah,
almost.
try not to use the broken ones.
All right. So be careful when you're putting in the oil. You always want to add something away from you, okay? That way you don't have any backsplash of that oil coming on you or your clothing. Could be dangerous, okay? Another one? Excellent.
Another one. Let's get one more, just in case.
Okay. Also, another thing when you're frying up these plantains, you want to make sure that they stay separate from each other. They have a tendency of sticking together if they're too close. So,
Let's put these over here.
all right. Let's get a couple towels up here so when we take these out. All right. Now, we don't want to caramelize these too much. They are very sweet plantains. They're already ripe, so they have a lot of natural sugars in them already. So we don't want to necessarily cook them too much. Okay?
Now, something very important is that you want the plantain to stick to the tenderloin. So you want to use that plantain hot. And what we're going to do is we're going to put one plantain here. We're going to put another one here. And we're just going to roll my tenderloin. Remember to season your tenderloin. This one was already being seasoned. So you want to wrap it like this, and then you want to put it in the bag.
And we have another good question coming in. Since there are different sizes, are they going to cook at different temperature, different speeds?
Well, that's one of the beauty about sous vide. If we're cooking, let's say grilling the tenderloin, that might be a case. But since we're doing sous vide, it doesn't matter if it passes a little bit longer on the time, because it's not going to reach a higher temperature. So it's always going to be the same.
You're not going to have an overdone piece of meat.
You're not going to have an overdone. So it's very, very precise. So you just put it here, and then you take the machine, which take all the air out, and just vacuum pack. You can get one of those machines for your house if you want. They're not that expensive. They're about
great for preserving. And
150, and they preserve food beautifully. Okay? So now that we have our tenderloin, okay, we're gonna use this one that I put here previously. Okay, they've been cooking for about 30 minutes. It takes about 35 minutes, but if you have it a little bit longer time, it won't affect the cooking process. Now, if you go way over, let's say you leave it for 2 hours, then the meat is gonna start being a little bit mushy. It's gonna be a little bit, the texture is gonna be different. You're not gonna have an overcooked product, but the connective tissue is gonna start breaking down, so you're gonna have a different kind of texture.
It's kind of like the same thing when we're slow roasting something.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do our sauce. Me, something here. Chef, if you wanna help me here.
Sure, of course.
We got some clarified butter. And what's clarified butter? Clarified butter is basically the oil of the butter. It's just pure fat. What we do is we take butter, we heat the butter, and butter it's made out of what, Chef?
Butter is about 80% fat.
And the other is water.
18% water and about 2% of
milk solids, which is basically proteins. So when you heat the butter, what's going to happen is that the water is going to evaporate eventually, and the milk solids are going to concentrate and going to go to the bottom. And then you end up with a very, very clear liquid, which is actually just the fat. Okay, why we want to clarify butter? Very simple. You can reach a higher temperature without the fat being burned.
Yeah, because whole butter burns relatively easy.
Exactly. So, and you can still have that flavor of the butter, you know, and you can cook with it.
Let's start off a little bit. We do have another question. Do you need that machine to do this cooking technique?
Well, you actually don't need the thermocirculator, which is what's controlling the temperature. You can do it on a hot bath, on a regular pot, but you're not going to be able to control the temperature. So you're going to have to, in that case, to measure how much time I'm using, and you have to
Candy
kind of like
something like that would work. Yeah.
what?
A candy thermometer or
Candy thermometer,
in your water
I'm
would
sure
work.
it's going to work. But the vacuum pack machine, that definitely you need it, because this is what's going to take away all the air and the oxygen, and it's going to let you do the process. Okay?
All right. I have the clarified butter hot over here already, so I'm going to go ahead and add these shallots the chef gave me.
Okay.
All right. Chef, will you pass me that
Here.
All right. Just
We
gonna
have
stir
another
this around a
question.
little bit.
What is Chef Bertiz exactly? Chef Bertiz, it's basically a list of chefs that specialize in certain cuisines. Let's say if you specialize in Caribbean cuisine, then you're gonna appear in that list as a Caribbean chef. So if people need more information about it, they can reach you.
Basically what you're
It's
excel
basically
at.
a list, exactly.
Basically what a chef would excel at. Okay. So I have these shallots. They're over here. They're nicely getting some caramelized color. And exactly what would a shallot be?
Shallot, it's very similar to an onion. It's a little bit sweeter. It does have a little bit more delicate flavor.
And normally you can find those in the supermarket.
Definitely. And if you don't find any shallot, you can always use regular onion. So it does add a little bit of different flavor, but you can always substitute it with regular onion. Okay?
All right.
So next part, very, very important. We get here rum, and what I did, I add the raisins first. I pour the rum, and I'm soaking the raisins for about 30 minutes to an hour. The reason I want to hydrate those raisins when I put them there, it's going to release more flavor when they're cooking if I hydrate it first. Now, alcohol is very flammable, right?
Very flammable.
So
Especially hot.
so it's very, very important that when you're putting the rum, you take the pan out of the heat. So that's very, very important.
Especially if you're using gas.
Especially if you do it and it's too hot, it might come on fire. If you have the bottle, it might come the fire inside the bottle, it might explode, so you don't want to have that accident. So what we do, we take it out. Okay, we're gonna pour the rum and the raisins.
All right.
And then we return it to the fire. Okay? If it's hot enough, it's gonna flame. If you want it to flame, you can always tilt it a little bit, and then you get the flame. Okay?
As that heats up, it'll come up. Another question. Is butter best to use than oil? So is butter better than oil when you're cooking? Or does
It depends
depend?
what you're cooking, actually. It depends your preference also. It depends what flavor you want to get. I love butter. I normally use butter for, I think, most of my dishes. But if you're using like olive oil and you want that flavor of the olive oil, I'll give you an example. If I do a Spanish tortilla, I normally use olive oil because I want that flavor of the olive oil. But yeah, you get a really, really nice flavor from butter.
Depending on diet, depending on the flavor that you want, of course. I mean, you could substitute the butter for an oil in this and have a really good sauce as well. So.
And also, you cannot kind of like deep fry something in butter. because you cannot reach that high temperature. It's gonna start smoking.
Right.
So you might wanna use a different kind of oil, maybe peanut oil or corn oil, which has a higher smoking temperature. So it depends actually on what you're doing. Okay.
So can we actually do this at home, Chef?
Of course we can do that at home. Even if you don't have a flame, if you have an electric burner, just let it evaporate the alcohol, let it reduce a little bit. If you want to have the flame, just get some long matches or
a long lighter?
Or a long lighter and just turn it on. Okay?
Do be careful with the short ones, though.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to throw the match inside. Okay, so what we're doing here, basically, we want all the alcohol to evaporate. So once the fire is gone, then we don't have the alcohol. We got the flavor of the rum. We got the flavor of that molasses that we were talking about, the brown sugar, because rum is made out of molasses. So we get that sweeter flavor in on our dish. We got another question. Once you've cooked the meat in the water, does it still look raw? And if it does, do you put it on the grill to get sauté look? That's an excellent, excellent question. That's actually one of the disadvantages about cooking sous vide, is that you're not gonna get a Maillard reaction. And what's a Maillard reaction?
It's flavor.
It's flavor, it's color, okay? It's a lot of things. Basically, when the amino acid of the protein caramelize, they caramelize with the sugar, they're gonna add a brown color to that piece of meat. They're gonna add different flavors. So you don't get that with the sous vide. So what we do, you have two options. You can sear the meat and then cook it sous vide. Or what we're gonna do, we're gonna take it out of the pouch. We're gonna take a hot pan and we're gonna sear it to both sides to get that color, to get that texture. So yeah, that's a great, great question.
All right.
Okay, so we have, right here, you see the rum has been evaporated.
And reduced.
It's been reduced. Now, we're gonna use demi-glace. Demi-glace, it's a mother sauce. It's one of the leading sauce, something that we learned here at Le Cordon Bleu, and you're gonna be using, if you decide this as a career, you're gonna be using all your life. Okay, it's basically a sauce made out of a brown stock. A stock that we made with veal bones, and we brown those bones in the oven before we do the stock.
More the Maillard reaction.
Basically, what we want is to create a Maillard reaction, have that color, have that flavor, and then make the stock with that color and that flavor. That's the reason it's brown. Okay, you can see it here. That's the color comes from that Maillard reaction. So we add a little bit of the demi. Can we add a little bit more, Chef?
Sure. And Chef, what kind of rum did you use? We had a question coming in. And if you didn't want to use rum, could you use some other substitute?
Of course, you can use any kind of, you can use brandy. Brandy will give a great flavor.
Brandy's nice.
Now, any kind of rum that is a dark rum, don't use a light rum because it doesn't have as much flavor. When it comes to rum, they are put in barrels. And the longer they're in barrel, the darker the color is going to be, and the more flavor you're going to get from that rum.
So just like a wine they're aged in oak.
So basically, if you get a white rum, you're not going to get that flavor from the oak where they aged that rum. So try to use a dark rum. It doesn't have to be an expensive rum, but definitely a dark rum. Okay.
Right,
so
what else are we going to do to the sauce, Chef?
Basically, the sauce. So what I want to do, I got here an immersion blender. And I want to extract all that flavor from those raisins. I want to make sure that I get the most of those raisins. So I'm going to take an immersion blender. And you have to be careful it doesn't spill. Okay, I'm just going to blend a little bit.
Yeah, we can also tilt it up
tilt
just a little bit so
it
it submerges more.
Okay.
All right, the sauce is looking excellent, Chef.
It's definitely going to taste good. Okay,
right.
So you can leave it and cook a little bit longer to extract more flavor. Let me take this out. Okay, and then you want to strain it. Okay, why you want to strain it? We want to end up with a very smooth sauce. You don't want a lumpy sauce. Okay, so we're going to strain it, and I got some more raisins, and this raisin we're going to use for garnish. So I'm going to add these raisins here because I want them to hydrate with the sauce. Okay. So we're gonna leave it there.
So I'm gonna put that on low, Chef. Actually, I could use that.
Side.
I could use that for a second.
Okay. Oh, sorry. There you go.
All right. Excellent. Sauce is
Okay.
yours,
So
Chef.
we got our sauce. It's looking good. Put this here. Now, As always, we're gonna add salt and pepper to season our sauce. A little bit of salt. And we're gonna use black pepper. Black pepper and white pepper, same pepper. Different. Black one has the shell. Okay, white one, you take the skin out of the pepper, so you end up with the white pepper. So why I'm using black instead of white?
Well, it's a brown sauce, right?
It's a brown sauce, exactly. If I was doing a bechamel, which is a white sauce made out of milk, now I probably would use a white pepper. That doesn't mean I cannot use black pepper, right, Chef?
True.
It's just a matter of preference. It does taste a little bit different, but it's the same pepper. Okay. Put this here.
All right. Another question coming in. Is the stock kind of similar to roux made with flour?
Well, basically stock, it's a base to do sauces, to do a stew. You use it to do rices. It's made out of bone and it's a liquid.
For those that don't know what a roux is?
Roux, it's a thickening agent that you use clarified butter and flour. Okay, so basically you use it to make it thick. So if I take brown stock and I add a little bit of brown roux, I end up with my Espanol sauce, which is my brown sauce, which is basically what I'm using here. Okay, let's turn this a little bit lower. So I'm gonna keep cooking this at a low temperature. And we're gonna start cooking our carrots. Can we put that there, Chef?
Sure.
And this is a very, very classic technique, very simple. And I wanted to use it because it's gonna add color to the plate, it's gonna add a little bit of flavor, but it's also gonna be a fusion between new stuff, new techniques, okay, new flavors, and classic culinary technique, okay? These are carrot vichy, which is basically glazed carrots, okay? And we just take carrots, what I did here, we did a tournet cut. This is one of the cut we practice here at Le Cordon Bleu. It's one of the most difficult cuts, I would say, when it comes to knife skills.
But it adds a lot of elegance to a plate.
Of course, it makes a lot, it looks very, very pretty. You can see the amount of work that the chef put into the plate when you see a cut like this.
Extra love.
Okay, when you have a cut, you're gonna see it's have 7 faces. It should look a little bit like a football ball, right? So what we're gonna do is very simple. We're gonna put it there. I'm gonna sprinkle some sugar to make it a glaze. Just a little bit of sugar. Now you don't want a sweet dish. You just want some.
Basically, what we're gonna do is kind of glaze and caramelize that sugar a little bit.
There's a big difference between having a syrup and having a glaze. So I'm gonna add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Okay?
All right. For that sauce, we have another question coming in. What can you use besides rum or any other alcohol flavor?
Well, you can use wine. Wine's really, really good. If you use a good burgundy, you're gonna have that really, really dark red color.
Brandy's
you
a
can
good
also
choice.
use brandy. You can use different types of brandy like Calvado, which is brandy made out of apples. You have you can use whiskey if you want. Okay, you have a lot of alternative. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water here, just a little bit, okay? And what I wanna do is...
So you're basically gonna steam these?
Basically, I'm gonna steam this, but to be able to steam it, I need to cover them.
All right.
So we're gonna do a cartouche. Chef, what's a cartouche?
A cartouche. A cartouche is actually a piece of paper that we're going to use as kind of a lid, let's say. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a circular sized piece of paper to fit right over the top of the saute pan, okay?
So basically we take parchment paper, we're going to fold it in half. Okay, you can use wax paper at home if you have some wax paper. And then we're going to fold it again in half.
And Chef, if you have a lid to your saute pan, do you need to make a cartouche?
You don't need to make a cartouche. Now, I like to do a cartouche because it's gonna release a little bit of the steam that it's coming off of the water, so there's not gonna be any condensation back to the carrots. But you can also put just a lid and work like that. So once I fold it in half, I'm gonna fold right here.
From the folded corner.
Exactly. Okay, gonna fold again.
Looks like you're making a paper airplane, Chef.
Just like a paper airplane. But we're not, this one's not gonna fly, definitely. Okay, so again, and one more time. Okay, now, I got here, I'm gonna measure the radius of the pan. So I take from the center to the corner, and it's about right here. So chef, could you cut this right there with a knife?
Sure.
Okay.
Be careful. Always when you're cutting, you want to cut away from yourself, just so you don't cut yourself.
And you might want to also, if you want the tip, just cut a small piece of the tip, okay, to make a small hole. Now when you open this,
It's kind of like the snowflakes we made in kindergarten.
and now the reason I did that, I made that hole in the center, you want to get the excess of steam to be out. If not, you're going to end up with the tongue.
And another thing, you don't want to make these too big either, because if you make them too big, they're going to hang over the side, and especially if you have another gas range, it's going to start a fire. So
Exactly.
make it inside the pot, okay?
So we're almost ready. I'm going to put this here. And now we're going to go and sear our meat.
All right.
Do we have any questions? No?
None
Okay,
yet.
so I got my meat here. Okay, actually I have another piece here too.
All right.
Okay,
Perfect.
so we have a plate.
Yep. Some paper towels here too.
Okay, I'm gonna take meat out of the pouch.
Now, if we wanted to do this, could we use maybe a bacon or something to wrap this up?
You can use bacon if you want, but
thinking about the more classic.
understand also that if you do it sous vide, the bacon is not gonna be crispy. The bacon is not gonna cook like we normally do, but it's still gonna infuse a lot of flavor. It's gonna add a lot of flavor to that piece of meat. It's gonna add fat, okay? And mainly the reason we use bacon is because we normally use a dry heat method, and a lot of the fat from the tenderloin evaporates. So what you wanna do is add some fat so that tenderloin actually absorb that fat and you get that flavor, okay? So.
And the tenderloin is a very tender piece of meat, hence the name, right? But it doesn't necessarily have a lot of fat to it.
Exactly. It doesn't have that marbling that you find, like, for example, in
ribeye or
ribeye, which is probably one of my favorite. So I got a pan. First thing you're gonna do always, heat the pan, okay? First, the pan needs to be hot. Once the pan is hot, then you add your fat, in this case, clarified butter, and then you sear. Why do you wanna heat the pan first?
Why
Because
would I have it?
very simple. You're gonna have some pores in the pan, they're gonna expand. And when you put the fat's going inside those pores, so what's gonna happen is that your meat is not gonna get stuck in the bottom of the pan. Okay? So let's take a little bit of that clarified butter.
Hey, there are a few questions that we missed during this demo. We can take a few minutes to ask those. All the reactions that we talk about is something that you can expect to be taught at the Cordon Bleu, correct?
Of course, everything that we're doing is basically cooking technique, professional cooking technique, classic cooking technique. We just giving it a little bit of a twist. We just change it a little bit to make it a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more modern. So I'm gonna take my tenderloin, and now I'm gonna sear it to have that color and that flavor from the Maillard reaction. Can I have the spatula, chef?
Sure. We have another question. Should those plantains be very ripe when they're done? Because I know we use plantains in various stages from green to yellow to even almost black when they're ripe.
Well, you have to be careful. If it's too ripe, it's gonna start crumbling in your hands. So you don't want that. If it's too green, once it's fried, it's gonna be hard. It's not gonna be as flexible as I want. So it's gotta be in that perfect stage where it's completely ripe, but it's not.
As we had them, they were yellow, pure yellow, and they were still a little bit brown on top. Just as they're starting to be yellow and a little bit painted.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you see some part that is green, then you need to let it ripen a little bit more. Okay. So we're just searing the meat. Okay. And this might take about a minute, depending on how hot is the pan. Maybe 2 minutes. Okay.
And put a clean plate up here for your presentation, Chef.
Sure. You see that? That's the Maillard reaction. That's what we're looking, that color.
That brown crust that we get, some like a grilled or nicely seared meat.
That's a really nice flavor. Let me put this here. We got our sauce. Start plating.
Let's do this.
Can you finish searing the meat, Chef?
Sure. Here's a spoon for your sauce, sir.
Thank you. So I'm gonna, here you go, Chef.
Thank you.
Just going to mix this a little bit. I'm gonna take first a little bit of the sauce only. I'm gonna put a little bit here in this side. A little bit more. So you want to put it, chef, right here,
right
in that side. There you go. Let's push it a little bit to the side, right there. And then we're gonna take a little bit of our raisins, and we're gonna use these raisins to garnish. See? Okay. Finish with the sauce. We're almost done with the
carrots.
With the carrot. Let me put this on the side. You see, we have another question, chef.
Does the recipe allow for meat to be cooked in every temperature? Yeah, we would have to adjust the temperature of our circulator so we can have the correct temperatures.
Exactly.
And normally in a restaurant, you'd probably have a couple of those.
Probably have like 4 of those. 1 for the meat, at least 2 for meat because people like different temperature. But you need a completely different temperature for the fish. Fish normally we use 128 degrees Fahrenheit, while meat normally goes between 145 to 150. Okay, so I got here some microgreens, which we're gonna use for garnish. And let me see.
Another question coming in, why would we use a spatula instead of tongs? Good question. Yes, we could use a tong, but we have to worry about the plantain that we have wrapped around the outside as well. If we go start using tongs, we might break that plantain and it's gonna mess up the outward appearance and kind of ruin the presentation.
So I think our carrots are basically done. So you can see how nice color you have in the carrots. You can see they look shiny, they look like a glaze. They don't have a syrup around it. It's just basic glaze that we're gonna use. We're gonna put some carrots here. And we wanna present normally.
Chef, those are fancy tongs you have there.
Those are really nice tongs. Actually, they're for medicine, so, but they're really nice. So we're gonna take this here and we're gonna just put 3 pieces just to add some color, a little bit of flavor. Of course, it's gonna taste good. Okay.
And Chef, I'm sure some people are wondering, why would you use tongs like that?
Well, it's a little bit easier to control. If I use something like this, I might even hurt the carrot if it's tender in the outside, and it's a little bit harder to
So basically
control.
you have a little bit more control.
Yeah, so basically I use this normally just for plating. When I'm cooking, I use this, but if I'm plating, I use this. Or my favorite one, this one.
The mini.
Why? This one is basically for plating. You have a spoon where you can use for plating, and then you have your tongs on the other side. This is one of my favorite. Actually, I'm gonna use it for my microgreens. And what we do here, we combine a little bit of like a mesclun mix of microgreens, very small.
Basically what a microgreen would be is kind of a baby salad, okay? We can get micro mint, we can get micro basil, we can get micro lettuces. So basically after they sprout and start to give out some of their foliage, then we pick them and use them in their young stage, just like we would on a young carrot or something like that.
And then we have here, I got 2 different oils. And normally we use different type of colors in the kitchen, and a lot of this color we achieve it using oils. What we do is we infuse color and flavor into the oils. Basically, I have here a cilantro oil, which goes really good with the plantain, okay, and a parsley oil. Difference is the way that I made this one and the parsley one.
Now these are pretty fancy. You're gonna see them at some restaurants.
But it's very, very easy to do. It's very, very easy to make. This one you just take cilantro, oil, of course, salt and pepper because you want it to be seasoned,
flavor,
and just put on a blender. That's it. So it does add a really, really nice touch to the plate. You're gonna see now. And if you want an oil that is a little bit more clean, you know, a little bit more neat, then
clear.
What you want to do is once you blend that, you put on a pan and you're gonna heat it for probably like 20 minutes at a low temperature. So what's gonna happen is all the water, all the moisture from the leaves is gonna evaporate and the solid is gonna go to the bottom, very similar to what we do when we do the clarified butter. And then you end up with a very clear oil. And
so we have a question coming in. Is cilantro oil something that you can buy maybe at the store? I wouldn't even necessarily suggest buying it from a store. You can make it really easy, really fresh from ingredients you buy in your local supermarket.
Definitely, it's a lot easier.
If you have a blender and some
cilantro, that's all you
oil,
need. That's all you need. Okay, so you have here
that's beautiful, Chef.
The finished plate. Very simple. Okay, classic techniques. That's what we teach here at Le Cordon Bleu, right? classic technique.
techniques.
How can you apply that into your roots, right? Into the things that you like
Basically,
the
we're
most.
taking some classical dish from your childhood or your country where you're from, and kind of taking the classical French techniques, applying them, and kind of changing up to basically make it a little bit more classy or a little bit more nice.
Upscale,
Upscale is
right?
a good number. All right, so we have this dish. Now we need to finish the creme brulee that I started earlier. All right. So what we're going to do for that? Okay. I have some sugar. I'm going to bring out that torch that I had earlier, and I have a creme brulee that I've already baked off. Okay. How are we going to know when the creme brulees are done? It's a good question. What I always say to my students is when it jiggles like Jell-O and not wiggles like water, that's how we're going to know it's done. Okay. So if it has a very liquidy consistency, then you know the eggs haven't quite coagulated and set yet. So, but if it has a jiggle to it, then you know they're nice and cooked. Okay. So I'm just gonna start off my torch. Okay. One thing: why do we buy a creme brulee? Why do we order creme brulees at a restaurant? Okay.
I think we like, personally, I like that very crunchy, that sugar on top. That's actually what makes it so special. Because we have the flan, you know, in the Spanish roots, and it's good, and I like it a lot, but I don't have that crunchiness on the top.
It's almost like an upside down creme brulee.
Very, very, very nice.
All right. So what I like to do, I like to make sure that I have a really nice crust on this. Okay. And how I get that, I put, instead of putting normally one layer as many people would do, put one layer of sugar and then burn that, I try and put 3 layers on there. Okay. And I'm gonna put very thin layers in the beginning, and the last layer I'm gonna put a little bit more so we can caramelize that and get a nice color reaction to that. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is very lightly sprinkle a little bit of sugar on. All right. And then I'm gonna take that sugar and I'm just gonna melt it down. Okay. I don't want to necessarily get any color right now. What I want to do is just make sure all those crystals kind of dissolve. All right.
Basically making caramel without that color.
Exactly. All right. So then here I'm gonna add my other layer. All right. It's kind of building and building on our layer of sugar. And this is what we really love when we go to the restaurant. We get our spoon so we can tap that and just crack it right through the nice creamy custard. Okay. It's that texture that we really like. Okay. After all, it is a very nice and elegant dish, and as you saw earlier, it's very easy to make. All right.
Chef, I see we have a question. What cost will you sell these plates for at a restaurant?
Well,
that's a really
very good
question.
It's a good question.
That there's many variables involved. You know, you have to take into consideration where you have your restaurant at. You have to take into consideration your
clientele.
Product, your clientele. So it's a good question. Definitely, it's not going to be a cheap price. I think you can ask some good money for these. Remember, when you go to a restaurant and you eat something, you want something different. You want to experience something new, and whatever you want to put to a plate, or whatever price you want to put to a plate, if it's the experience of a person as it's eating that plate, you know, if it got the volume.
You're not necessarily only selling food, you're kind of selling an
experience. It's the whole
at times,
experience
too.
what you're selling,
All right?
exactly.
So I'm going to take this creme brulee, put it right on my plate. Okay, we have a nice golden color on the top. I paired this with a mango gelée and a honey twill that we made up here. Basically, this is similar kind of to a fortune cookie consistency. It's a paste, and we bake it, and then we can form it into many different shapes, kind of similar to like a waffle cone or something like that would be at your.
Looks very
restaurant.
nice.
All right. Can't wait to just crack into that. What would be a good wine for this? Definitely, if you have a red meat, you can go into a Pinot Noir or a Cabernet even.
You would like also to have a sweeter wine. It will go really nice. Remember, we have a lot of sweet elements here.
A Zinfandel would work really nice.
Zinfandel would work really nice. You don't want to go to too dry. I know we have meat, and normally dry wines go with meat, but you have a lot of sugar involved here, so you don't want to overpower that with a too wine that is too dry.
And I would say maybe for a dessert, we'd maybe go with maybe a Pedro Jimenez cherry or something a little bit sweeter.
Really nice.
Maybe a late harvest Riesling or something a little bit sweeter, something that goes, because these flavors are a bit different. Okay, even though they're still in the Caribbean kind of theme, we would probably, as a restaurant, pair it with something else. Okay.
Well, you have seen different classical techniques with different items. You can see there's other things that we do here at Le Cordon Bleu. This has been done by Chef Abundio Bayet. He's a master carver. And you can see we have here, this is a melon. He created this fish out of a melon. And
I love the tiki hut scene over here.
Tiki hut. Oh, we want a tropical kind of scenario. That's the reason he did something like that. But that's something that if you want to pursue, that's something that you can do in the kitchen.
That's one of the beauties about being in the culinary field. There's so many different angles that you can take.
Definitely.
And if you wanted to be a gourmet chef and just really focus on cold food preparation and carving and ice carving and things like that.
Too.
If you want to take it to a culinary chef and worry about the savory side or even pastries.
And even in the savory side, you have a banquet. I know chefs that they love to do banquets, while other chefs prefer to go to a more personalized dish where they can put a little bit more into that plate, personalized plate. And same in the pastry, you can go to breads.
Right, you can do breads, you can do
sweets,
pastries, chocolates, sugar. There's all sorts of different techniques, and there's a world of culinary out there that's just kind of waiting to be taken.